how can you put a price tag on a brand? Or how can you price a bunch of views if you don't know what they do for your business? Today, I'm here with Carlos. Hi, Carlos.
Hey, man. How are you?
Welcome to the studio. We're trying something different, special today.
It's amazing.
IRL podcast for the first time. Carlos here. We met through Cristo. He is a coach. He's the founder of Exit Sales, and he knows how to manage sales conversation, which is something a lot of creators and creatives need. So we're going to talk about how to manage the value conversation on branding, and we're gonna see if there's a correlation between views and money and how to manage a conversation when it comes to ROI of these things that sometimes feel so lofty.
Also, this episode is brought to you by Riverside, but more on that later.
So the first thing I want to ask you, Carlos, is can these two things coexist? So can you build a brand as you're really strong in sales?
Well, I think so, yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with the perception of what is the value of what brand does. A lot of this has to do with conversations and helping folks understand the perception of value and shift it. Because what happens a lot in the world of anything, when someone is looking to buy something or invest in something, internally in their head, at least when I get approached in conversations, they're always thinking of things as a cost, right? How much is this going to cost me? What is the expense going to be? And I think our role is, once we get them in the door and we're starting a conversation, is to be curious and understand the context of what's happening in their world, what goals they want to achieve, and be able to quantify and qualify the perception of how valuable that is to them, whatever outcome, goal, long-term, milestone they want to get to. And upon understanding that, then you can use that, I don't want to say as ammunition, but as evidence to be able to present back and to say things like, because you said that this is valuable to you, you can make the connection of saying, here's how branding is going to help you achieve that.
Okay, let's pause right here for a second. Every time there's guests on my episodes, I record all their content with Riverside. Our videos are recorded locally on both of our devices, which means that if the connection breaks or anything happens, we're good. This is actually the main reason why I started using Riverside 2 years ago, but it's a completely new tool today. During the last few months, they've been incorporating a lot of very interesting AI tools. All the video you record is automatically transcribed. That allows you to edit your video by making changes on the text. Magic Clips is another AI tool that will find the most relevant moments of the conversation and create clips that are ready to post on social media. And one of my favorites, AI Notes, super useful also for meetings, that will summarize the conversation and even create chapters for your YouTube videos. Absolutely essential tool for me, and I'm super happy that I was able to partner with them and make it easier for you to get started. All you need to do is click on the link down below and use my code AlexAntolino for a 15% off discount when you sign up. I would say do what I did and experiment with it for a month or two. It's not even $20 a month with a discount, so there's not much you're gonna lose there. And you might unlock great content opportunities in meetings you're already having by just thinking media first and having the right tool. So just think about it. Now let's go back to the video.
You know, in this channel, we talk a lot about content and how to build brands and stuff like that, right? And so I've heard from like a few entrepreneurs or like people starting their brands, or even like brand managers or creative directors being like, okay, Antolino, yes, I know how to sell like paid ads, but like, how can I sell to my boss or to my founder that we need a creator full time, for example? And so I wanted to bring you here, like brainstorm a little bit, because you obviously do sales, you know how to like lead these conversations. So I want to learn from you, and I'm sure people watching want to learn that from you as well. How can you pitch something that doesn't bring money on the table? Like you can spend like 3-4 months doing shorts, and you might get like a few viral shorts and like millions of views. But then how does this bring money or not? And so I think sometimes it's hard to justify that. So I wanted to ask you, how would you approach a conversation like this if you were to, for example, convince your boss as a brand manager to maybe hire a creator full time?
Yeah, there's a great example that I'll share with you. My mentor, Phil Jones, who teaches this concept of like, how do you influence through words, but also the perception of value. And he talks about this idea of when, you know, you've probably seen this in sales, in movies, especially sales movies, like sell me this pen.
Yeah, I was sorry. I was actually asked that on like my first job when I was 17, and I think I got the job because of that question.
That is so funny. But the idea here was that if you were to see this pen in a store, you know, let's say an office supply store, and it's just kind of hanging on a shelf in this little flimsy packaging, what would be the perception of how much that pen costs, just first impression?
The $10.
Right. Now let's take that pen and you stick it in a nice mahogany box.
Yeah, more than tens of dollars.
All of it has to do with the perception of value. Exactly. And so how do we create value inside of a conversation? Going back to your question about, you know, like how do you have someone believe that branding is something that's worth investing in? And it all has to do with asking really thoughtful, curious questions. And this is where your creativity can really kick in. I think that sales is actually, rather than having good gift at using this, it's having a good gift at using this.
100%.
And it's listening and being thoughtful and being curious, being genuinely interested in the customer's agenda, not yours.
Right.
So what are some good questions you can ask to help the person self-discover that they need you more than you need them? That's like the $1 million question, right? So I'm going to share with you a couple of phrases because I'm certified to teach some work that goes into how to ask really meaningful, thoughtful questions. So give me an example of someone that you would want to pitch something, and what would be an objection that they would give you?
Yeah, so let's say this brand comes to me and they want to start making content. And I tell them, okay, I can make content for you. And they were like, what type of content? And they are like, oh, we want shorts because we've heard shorts are like going viral, la, la, la. And I'll be like, okay, if I can make content for you, it's going to be around $4,000, $5,000 a month. And they're like, oh my God, we can spend $5,000 every month on like 20 reels. That's too expensive.
Got it. That's a common thing that could happen. So you mind if we just play it for a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So let's pretend you're the company.
Okay.
And I'm just going to be the person trying to present this to you.
All right.
Like, hey, Alex, thanks for chatting with me. Super excited to learn more about what your project is. So if you don't mind me asking, more or less, what is it that you're looking to accomplish?
We are trying to get more eyeballs because our brand has launched and we don't have that many customers. So we're trying to get at least to hit like 100,000 followers on TikTok and Instagram.
That's awesome. That's a great goal to have. And I'm pretty sure that achieving is achievable. And I'm confident that doing that is going to help you take off. Now I got a question for you because I'm curious. What is your experience and what goes on behind like that to get from where you are to that outcome?
I have no idea. That's why I'm calling you.
Do you know anybody else that has done this and been successful?
Yeah, a lot of like teenagers do that. Like they start making content, they're out of nowhere, and like they go viral overnight, hit 50,000 followers or 100K. So I think we can do it too.
Yeah. Do you have any knowledge of more or less what they needed to invest to get to that?
I mean, they're teenagers. I don't think they have that much money.
It's possible, but you know what's kind of interesting, what I have found is like a lot of these actually do a little bit of early on investment before they actually do reach the viral, and it's a lot of upfront work. And since they're doing the work themselves in this scenario, we would be facilitating that. Now let me ask you more or less, do you have an idea of what goes into the investment towards achieving that, more or less?
What do you mean?
A budget or what it takes in order to...
No, that's why I'm calling you.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. So more or less, it's going to be this much, 4,000 to 5,000. And pause for a second. A month, or for the project, or for...
Let's say 5,000 per month to get like 20 reels.
Okay. And on average, we're on offline mode. On average, how long does it take with that investment to get to that 100,000, for example?
depending on the quality of the content. But if the content is good and like it's really, really good, you find something maybe like in 6 months, a year or something. I don't know.
Got it. Okay. So based on our conversation, if you want to get, by when would you want to get to that point, to the $100,000 mark?
I don't know. When do you think it's reasonable?
Yeah, it's a fair question. What I have found in my experience is that I've had a few folks take off immediately, maybe 90 days or less. I would say it's a little bit more of a rare occasion, but it could happen. But on average, anywhere between 6 to 12 months with high level of consistent engagement and an investment into this. But here's the deal. It's an upfront investment. You're not going to see the results right away. And that's why a lot of folks, most folks that decide not to go this route tend to kind of burn out or not really see a long term. So there's a little bit of a belief that goes into this,
Okay.
and consistency, because it takes a while for things to take off. But what I can tell you with confidence is that the work that we're gonna output for you is gonna get you more eyeballs. It's gonna get you more impressions. It's gonna get you more in front. And what I have found in my experience that the investment has, at the very least, returned. The return on investment has always come back, more than what was invested in the project. That being said, for what you said, more or less, I would say the investment can range anywhere from $10,000 a month if you really want to be aggressive, down to, let's say, $5,000 a month based on our recommended path. I want to just pause for a second and take a temperature on how does that land for you?
It's a lot, because how long will it take me to hit the 100,000?
Well, there's no guarantee, but like I said, in my experience, anywhere between 6 to 12 months.
6 to 12 months. So we're talking
Minimum engagement, yeah.
we're talking $10,000 for 6 or 10.
Well, if you were to engage in the more involved commitment, we can do that in 6 months or less. I'm pretty confident we can.
So you're saying $60,000 to hit the 100K,
More or less, yeah. We could say if we want to put it down.
and
to
the
numbers.
return on investment would be higher than that.
Yeah, that's the objective, right? Otherwise, this conversation wouldn't be make sense, right?
Okay, so I want to pause right here.
Yeah.
So 2 things I really liked from what you did.
Okay.
The first goal that I said, I was like, I want to hit 100,000 followers. Like if someone comes to me and says that, I'm already like, this is not the right approach.
Yep.
Because you don't control how many followers you get.
Sure.
But what I liked about how you responded to me is like, you never promised me that.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, we're trying to get there. We can, in 6, like if you spend that much money, we can try to get there in less time. But you never said, if you put on the table 50K, you're gonna have for 100% sure have 100.
Yeah. There's other elements that you can dig into. You could say, well, why 100? Right? And just like, because sometimes we just want to understand like their point of view. Because once we can arrive at their point of view, could it be possible that there's a little bit, even if they're 100, maybe they're 95% certain that hitting 100K equals money, return on investment, or maybe it's a vanity metric. I'll give you a perfect example for me, right? I have over 3,000 followers on Instagram. It's a freaking vanity metric. I convert close to nothing on that. I feel like it's my digital business card. I feel like it gets people to know what it is I do. And I know somehow indirectly, when someone wants to schedule a conversation with me, or the first thing that they say whenever they pitch me to someone and say, hey, watch this guy's video, we should train his team, whatever. I know that that's a long-term investment for me. YouTube, I have 224 subscribers. I've gotten more business from YouTube than I have from Instagram.
Let's go. What do you think that happened?
I have no freaking idea. Why is that?
In general, I think if videos are longer, they spend more time so that you get to build more trust. And at the end of the day, trust is what people need to make that buying decision.
So going back to this example, because what I was trying to do is use that as a selling point.
Yeah.
Could it be possible that if you were to share an example like that, maybe a case study where you had someone post content here with a higher follower count, but then they posted content here with a lower subscription count, but they got more business, would that potential customer feel like, oh, maybe the 100K is not really something I need to strive for? So you can shift their perspective. And I think that's what happens, is understanding why do they think the way they think, and why do they think that that's the thing that's going to get them to the outcome that they want.
So you got that. Here's like a first lesson on how to approach at least one conversation, right? Like one conversation with, your manager or the founder of the business, or even like your client, like you're trying to like show value of like that. One other question I want to ask you is, one of the things that works best on the internet and content is to talk about money. Money is survival. So if I tell you we spent $20,000 in the studio, you're already interested, because in a way that money is connected to survival, and we're as humans inherently interested in money, because that to us subconsciously means survival. So all the content around money does well on the internet because we all want to make money.
Sure.
When you talk about branding, it's a whole different story, because it's hard for me to talk about branding and show you immediate results, right? Why you should spend like $50,000 on a new brand? What's the ROI? It's really hard. I think Gary Vee has this like famous quote of like, what's the ROI of your mother, right? So one of the things I figure out when I talk about content is make this correlation between views and money. So instead of saying, okay, you want to make $1 million, you want to make 100K, and you can say you want to make 100,000 views, you want to make 1 million views. So there is some sort of correlation on how these things work, but it's an illusion, because like 1 million views doesn't get you necessarily like even like a single dollar. So how could you, maybe this is just a brainstorming, right? Like maybe you have some like
I have a
hot thoughts, but like how could you package this type of content that doesn't give immediate results, whether that's on your content or on your conversations with your team or your clients?
Ultimately, who are you trying to convince?
An audience, someone like me.
But let's talk about the person who needs to invest in that.
Right.
That doesn't believe, you can't quantify the ROI. Who is that person in front of you that you need to compel to say, yes, I believe in this, even though I know we're not going to get immediate ROI? It's
usually like, founders or entrepreneurs who are really focused on their product, and they're like, I hear you, but I have limited amount of money, and like, I think this is more urgent or more necessary. And that's usually one of the reasons why most companies don't do brand, is because if I have 100K and I need to do all these things within my business, I'll put like 30K in product development, 30K in marketing, 30K in HR, whatever. And then in the marketing bucket, it's all like paid ads, advertisement, because we need to get eyeballs, right? So there's nothing for brand, because like I cannot get the ROI specifically on Facebook. Facebook will tell you, 3%.
So what I think is start thinking like them. So what is the thing that they value the most? What are their top priorities? And meet them where they're at. Use their language, use their jargon, if you will, right? And really read the person, like the human, right? It's like, what do you see this? Like if we were, and this is it's called the Dan Sullivan question, which Blair.
The what?
The Dan Sullivan question.
Okay.
So Dan Sullivan is an author of a book that talks about value pricing and how to have deep conversations about helping people see value that you can't quantify. And Blair Enns has referenced it. Chris Do has referenced it. And it's exactly this. Imagine that 5 years from now, we're sitting here or in a coffee shop, and we're drinking just a coffee, and we're celebrating everything that we just accomplished. What needed to have happened in order for that outcome to be there? So now you're making the person visualize what they expect from you, right? But you're also helping them see things long term. And one of the things that could come out from it is like, thank you for helping me stay on and believe in this project long term, because I knew that, you know, this is going to be an initial investment. And what you want to try to do is shift conversations towards long-term thinking, right? And maybe even tell stories about brands that took a while before their brands actually took off. So I think maybe if you can have a couple of similar brands, like maybe that they appeal to or that they value, and just ask them questions like, what are some brands that you respect, like in your space?
All right, so we're gonna start wrapping up, but I think I really enjoyed the role play. So before we go, I'd like to do like one more role play.
Sure.
I wanted to do it about ROI, because there's this question that always triggers me. It's like, well, what's the ROI? And I'm like, I know I need to give an answer, but sometimes these things just like don't have a direct ROI, right? It's like, what's the ROI of short form content? I have no fucking idea. But sometimes you need to give some sort of answer or like parameters for them to be able to make a smart business decision, right?
Sure.
So I want to ask you being the person who's like pitching a service or who's been asked for a service, content creation, organic content. And I will ask you, what's the ROI of that? And I'm really curious to see, you know, how you will like literally like react to that. Yeah. Does that work?
Yeah, and what it is, it's a little bit more of the same stuff. It's just like understanding where they're coming from. And so one of the things I could say to that is, well, what is your ROI? And I could say, I'm curious, what makes you say that?
Well, because if we're going to spend like $50,000 on content, organic, I need to know that we're not pouring just that money down the drain.
Of course, that makes absolute sense. And that's not what we're going to accomplish here today. If you don't mind me asking, just out of curiosity, is there an ROI you had in mind that you felt would be something that would make sense?
I mean, we know with paid ads, we used to get like 5%, and it's been decreasing a little bit. So we're like at 2.8 now. So if I would get that,
got it,
I'd be happy.
What do you understand about the difference between paid ads and branding and how?
I like this. Okay. Well, the difference between organic content and paid ads is like I get the eyeballs, and with organic content, I don't have that control.
Right. And so then I'm not the expert at explaining the benefits, but what I've been doing is, who's controlling the conversation here, me or you?
You are controlling the conversation.
Why?
Because you're asking the questions.
Because the person that asks the questions controls the conversation. What we tend to do in these high stakes, awkward conversations is the initial thing we want to do when someone asks you a really uncomfortable question is what? It's like over justify and like over explain, and like we start getting nervous, and then people are now started to read you for like feeling caught. But what happened when I flipped it and I said, hey, before I answer that, I'm curious, I gotta put you on the spot. And when I'm asking you these questions like what makes you say that, and when I ask you questions like what is your experience, I am exposing that there's a potential, even if it's a small chance, that you are in that moment creating a little bit of doubt that what you think you know is not the answer, which then positions me as the person that holds that knowledge, which can then sort of reframe the perception of what is the value of branding, right? And that's the key. What you want to try to do is you're trying just to shift the perspective a little bit and say, look, if you see it from this point of view, I know that your current perception tells you or perspective tells you that this is the way it should be. And then by just asking these questions, you're just subtly creating doubts in their head, and you're positioning the value of joining you. And then you just go back with benefits. Person's gonna be like, when do we start, right? Where do I sign? Why? Because you confidently were able to manage that and just kind of navigate through it. But let me just pause there. What do you think about that?
No, I think it's great. In general, when you start asking questions, things start to look better. Not just because you don't, you're not in like the spotlight, and you kind of transfer that so you feel more relaxed, but also because you learn more about the person you're trying to help, which
context,
is what you should be doing, right? So I think that in general works really well, and I feel like more and more people are learning how to do that. But what I really liked about what you just shared is this idea of like when you start asking questions, sometimes they don't have the answers, and then when they don't have the answers, since you're asking the question,
become the
this
authority.
illusion that you're becoming the authority. Like, I never thought about this. It's almost like a magic trick. And that's why I love sales so much. If you like this episode, I think you should watch the episode I did with Bertine, where she actually did what we were talking about. She started making content, blew up on TikTok, and she's doing really well now. And she talked about the strategies that she's used and how is that changing her business.